Good. So let me get some of your comments before we start. I'm going to focus on chapter 3 and chapter 5. I'm skipping chapter 4. Okay. Um, First of all, some of you are looking into the Hebrew. Very good. Morales is not here, but she did a search on the difference, on the meaning of the word kill. She was worried, like some of you, right? Like thinking, what do you mean there's a time to kill? That makes no sense. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong. If I go to the word for murder, as it is spelled out in the Ten Commandments, right? Thou shalt not murder. It's a different word there, right? The word in the Ten Commandments is ratzach, murder. Harag, here is the word used, kill. Slight difference. Apparently war is okay for the man of peace that Solomon is, right? So killing outside of the context of murder, there's not many, not many cases, right? But, or I'm seeing a note in my Bible that one way to understand it is to see it as to destroy. So that should help some of you. So Morales is not here, but she was the one who kind of pointed out the two differences. So well done, Morales, if you're listening to the recording. Is that clear for some of you? I know some of you were complaining. Granik, you were complaining about this. Does that appease you a little bit? Okay, great. All right, Ahmed, noticing the yin and yang, right? The dance of the yin and yang, right? In chapter 3, we'll come back to that. Well thought out. This is exactly, I think, the way to look at it. This is the dance of opposites, right? Opposites need each other, as though all opposites, right? They're both good. There's not one better than the other. So we'll come back to this idea. Goldstein, good observation on olam from the verb ne'elam, which means to conceal. We'll come back to this. So you're already on the track where I'm going to be taking this, right? We'll be studying what does this word, I'm alluding here to the verse which talks about God has placed eternity in the heart. The word for eternity doesn't mean eternity. There's no eternity in the Hebraic cosmology, right? They don't have a concept of an afterlife like Plato, right? So this is a different, we have to understand this word differently, and we will. So especially Solomon, right? He's not going to be talking about an afterlife. He doesn't believe in the afterlife. We know that from the text, right? Both the beast and the human being go and die and it's over, right? So the word here that is translated eternity is not the right translation. We'll come back to that. Okay, Granik is worried that we are in the mother's house where everything is allowed, including sin. Where do you see sin, Granik, in this, in chapter 3? You're commenting on chapter 3. Which part here would be sinful?
Oh, I might have just been referring to killing, but
Okay.
yeah,
Okay, so
I
yes,
can see
yes.
that through that sense.
Although
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past the mother's house to do that, right? So that's totally something the mother would do, be like, go sin, my son. Learn, right? So, but no, in this case, I don't, if we understand the word to kill not as murder, as a different type of killing, maybe even metaphorical killing, right? To kill, a situation or kill a relationship. Right? There might be many, many ways that we destroy and kill, right? Doesn't have to be another human being. Good, good. All right. And then you mentioned that he uses the word bad over and over again. I'm figuring it's the Hebrew cha. Can you give me an inventory of the verses where you're finding this multiplication of the word bad? I'll let you do that while I continue. You can put it in the chat, right? And in answer to your question, Granik, also, who is this foolish king and wise youth? Those who know the story of the succession of Solomon. What is he referring to? Who succeeded Solomon? Kestenbaum, that was one big yawn right there.
I was hoping you wouldn't notice.
I'm seeing you guys all the time, almost. So who succeeded Solomon? Anybody know the story?
Yeah, Rechavam.
Who? Yes, yes. Is that a son of Solomon?
Yeah, it's his son.
Is it though?
Yeah, Rehoboam, he was the son of Solomon, but there was a civil war, and so Israel split up into two kingdoms where there was Rehoboam on one side, and then Jeroboam, who tried to lead a rebellion against him.
Yes, I was under the impression, and I need to check, I guess, my Bible, that it wasn't the son of Solomon who succeeded him. So I have to check. Um, but definitely, as you're mentioning, I think we can agree there's some issues here, right, with the succession. There is a rebellion. This is either a son or not a son. I have to check. I'm going to check today.
Yeah.
And so, right, the wise youth is this rebel, right, that takes over after this foolish king. So he's referring to that. So he's perhaps, this confirms what Stage was saying, that he wrote this book at the end of his life and he's already seeing what's going on politically, right? You can sense. So perhaps this is an answer to your question, Granik. Makes sense? Okay. Kestenbaum. Okay, Kestenbaum is mentioning the repetitions, and this is an important point. I want to stay on that a little bit. Make sure all of you are muted, by the way, so we don't have to interrupt. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about this observation by Kestenbaum of the repetition. This is a leitmotif, right? Let me write this word here in the chat. Leitmotif means this is a repeating pattern, right? That's what leitmotif means. Repeating pattern. Kestenbaum is noticing this repetition throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. Therefore, eat and drink and enjoy. This is a gift from God. But over and over again, you have this theme, right, of eating and drinking, enjoyment, right, which is not. This is unusual, right? In the Hebrew Bible, we have enjoyment is allowed, but it's not commanded, right? Like we have here in the book of Ecclesiastes over and over again, right? So this has led scholars to date Ecclesiastes to the Greek, right, Hellenistic time, and to connect it to Epicurus, right, the philosopher Epicurus, who's always talking about enjoyment and the whole expression carpe diem, right, seize the day, that we sometimes quote. This is from this Epicurus, right? This Greek philosopher. I'm thinking he's Roman with the way his name sounds. I have to check. Today I'm really not. I'm not able to follow the people I'm talking about. I'm uncertain where they're from, whose son they are, and so forth. But Epicurus, I'm figuring Roman around the Greek, right? It was still the Greek civilization, so. So yeah, people have made connections, right, between Ecclesiastes and Epicurus, but here you have a distinct way to be an Epicurean, right? Maybe I can ask you, Kestenbaum, each time he's talking about enjoyment, he's also mentioning something else. Did you notice?
Yeah, it's like the opposite, as in he'll say there's a time for planting, but there's also a time for reaping. So he's sort of putting the foil with every element that he's mentioning.
So not there where you mentioned on verse where is it? Blah, blah, blah. There, verse 13, chapter 3, verse 13. Everybody, please go there. I'm going to discuss this briefly before I get into the text. Chapter 3, verse 13, or 12, right? Thus I realized the only worthwhile thing there is for them to enjoy themselves and do good.
Verse 12.
Also, whenever man does eat and drink and get enjoyment of all his wealth, it is a gift from God. What's the difference between Ecclesiastes and Epicurus? Anybody want to try? What does Ecclesiastes add that Epicurus doesn't? Wagler, go ahead.
Isn't like Epicurus, you do that whenever you want to, and this is when you, after you finished your labors?
Let's see. Let me check. No, I just see, I don't see labor here. In this text, at least, I just see, he just talked about eternity or whatever that word is.
Mine says, moreover, that a man should eat and drink and enjoy himself in return for all his labors.
Where are you? What verse are you?
Isn't verse 3:13?
Verse 3:13. Whenever man does eat and drink out of all his wealth. Okay, great. Now we have a translation problem. Hebrews, please help me. Verse 13. Is this work?
Yeah, it says bechal amalo. Amalo is like toil or work. So yeah.
Okay. Yes, Wagner, you could make that point that there's a balance here, right? Perhaps in Ecclesiastes we could take it like this, right? That here he's talking about a balance between work and play, right? This is again kind of the yin and yang, right? Activity, rest, right? Perhaps that I think that works. You can say that. Whereas Epicurus, well, I'm not an expert in Epicurus, but I don't think he mentions work. Alim, so nice. Yeah, I would go with that. Alim, do you want to add something?
Like another thing that you could add is that he like accredits this enjoyment to God right at the end of the line.
Yes, right? Epicurus is talking about seizing, right? Ecclesiastes is talking about receiving. Do you see the difference? This is fundamental, right? When Epicurus says, seize the day, grasp it before it disappears, right? There is an element of effort of kind of, right? An element of, let me quickly grasp what I can before I die, right? There is an anxiety at the basis of Epicurean philosophy. At least it feels like it, right? If you're going to seize, it means that, right? You're hyperventilating that it's going to go away, right? So here we have more, again, what we talked about before, this attitude of receptivity, right? It's a kind of relaxation, right? In Ecclesiastes, there is a philosophy of surrender, of receptivity, of relaxation that you don't have in other philosophical texts, right? And we have to figure out at one point, where is this deep sense of relaxation coming from, right? I mean, this is a very a text which is, very tormented, right? So, and at the same time, you have these moments of complete just rest, right? Restfulness. So there is really a philosophy in Ecclesiastes. Underneath all the torment, you can sense a kind of stable thread, right? Of trust, you could say, right? Perhaps. There is an element here of faith, of trust, which undergirds the whole text, I think, because it comes up over and over again. This is a leitmotif, right? To be able to receive means you're at rest. Seizing means you're anxious, right? So there is a kind of, beneath all of the turmoil of the text, there is a restfulness, right? There is an element of, right? I'm receiving, I'm trusting that good will come my way, right? So this is, so Kessenbaum, good observation. So this is, I think, one of the teachings, right? One of the hidden teachings, obviously, of the book of Ecclesiastes is this ability to trust and to receive versus this kind of being anxious and grasping at life, right? This is coming up over and over again. This, remember, when I talk about gift from God, right? I'm remembering Sosa's concern, right? It can mean, of course, on the pshat level, that he's trusting in God, but it can also mean on a deeper, more existential level that he is simply able to receive whatever comes his way as good, which is what we're going to look at today, right? So I got a bunch of questions were popping up as I was talking. First of all, Kestenbaum, does it kind of, this response, how does it feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think not most, but what was really frustrating me is sort of just like this contradiction that I found of him saying that all is futile, right? Like Hevel Havalim, and then at the same time, sort of ending off in this verse that we were just discussing of how I realize the only thing that's worthwhile is for men to enjoy themselves in this lifetime. Well, which one is it? If everything is just vanity and everything is futile and there's no point to it, but then at the same time you comfort yourself by putting yourself in that vanity, it seems like you're trying to have it both ways. Obviously, this is like a pshat reading of it. It's a very simplistic reading of it. I'm sure as we delve deeper, it will become more clear, but at least on the surface level, it's just kind of frustrating because he seems to want to have it both ways, and it just doesn't really work.
Yes, but be careful, they're connected, right? We mentioned this when we did the first lecture on this. Let me remind you, right? Havel, remember, doesn't mean futility, it means breath, right? So it means simply that you are not, right? We are not in control. We are finite. We are mortal. We are precarious. We are fragile, right? This is the meaning of Havel. This fragility is the basis for receptivity, right? Only once you acknowledge that everything that you do is Hevel can you receive. As long as you're in control, you're not going to receive, you're going to grasp, you're going to seize, right? Epicurious, right? So only when I realize, like, I can't do this. This is out of my reach. This is out of my control. I'm a fragile clay being, right? At that moment, you are ready for what, Ecclesiastes doesn't use that term, but you're ready for the journey of faith, right? Of receptivity, of trust. Only when you've gotten to the point of seeing that everything is Hevel can you begin the journey of faith, not before. So Hevel is a necessary precursor, is a necessary prerequisite to the life of faith. Does that make sense, Kestenbaum?
Yeah, it's good to think of it that way in terms of it not just being futile, but
Yeah, exactly. So Ecclesiastes really, I mean, we could read that the deep meaning of Ecclesiastes is trust, right? Even though on the surface, it's like the ocean, right? On the surface, you have a big storm, but when you go deeper, it's very still, right? That's how I'm sensing the book, right? On the surface, there's a lot of, left, right, going this way, going that way, storm, up, down. Deep down, you can sense this thread of surrender, right? Trust, receptivity. You cannot receive from the universe if you don't trust, right? That good will come your way at every point, right? Even when it masquerades as bad, which we'll talk about today, right? So that I really make sure you guys write this down, because even though it's not part of the lecture, this is a very important moment here in the book of Ecclesiastes. Let me just summarize it so you can write it down. The leitmotif of enjoyment, right? What does it mean, right? How is it different from Epicurus? Epicurus sees the day. Ecclesiastes, receive what comes your way, right? The first one stems from anxiety. The second one stems from trust, right? And in fact, one could go even as far as to say that the sign, the outward manifestation that you are trusting or that you have faith is enjoyment. Let me say that again, right? Let me say that again. Yes, Ahmad, that's the idea. You relax into the infinite complexity of life, right? The sign that you are trusting, and it could be God or life, right? Is the ability, the capacity to enjoy. The moment you stop enjoying yourself, this is what is happening to you. You're not able to trust anymore. It is our ability to trust in life or in God which makes it possible for us to genuinely enjoy ourselves. So the outward manifestation of faith is joy. If you're not joyful, you don't have faith. Let me tell you quickly, just to illustrate this, a beautiful story that Martin Buber mentions in his book Gog and Magog. This is a Hasidic story. Hasidism is a branch of Judaism. So it's a Hasidic story, and I'll tell you the story and you'll get it. You'll get what Ecclesiastes is saying here, right? So this is a rabbi, very famous rabbi, and he happens to be best friends with the, how do you call this? With the head of the mafia, or the gangster of the town, or the thug, or the drug dealer, right? Whatever. Think of the worst possible person in your town. That's the best friend of the rabbi. And his disciples one day ask him, like, how can you, such a holy man, always be hanging out at the bar or the pub with this guy, right? They would hang out together and drink together and get drunk, the rabbi and the thug, right? And the disciples are perplexed. They're like, why are you always hanging out with this guy? He's a sinner. You're a holy man. How can you two be together? And the rabbi says, it's just that guy's always so happy. I love that guy. He's always cheerful, happy. I am feeling so like this guy is really a balm on my heart, right? So, and that's the story, right? The rabbi loves this guy because this guy's always happy-go-lucky, always cheerful, always buying drinks, always laughing. And the rabbi is like, that's why I want to be close to him. He's always happy. Now, going deeper, right? If you're the disciple, you would try to scratch a little and be like, why? How is happiness important? Why do you think the rabbi thought it worthwhile to be with this happy man? What was this happy man teaching the rabbi? What did this happy thug have that the rabbi didn't have? Right? If you read some of these Hasidic stories, you know that many of the rabbis struggled with depression, right? And he's probably one of them. He struggled with melancholy. I think Elie Wiesel has written a book on that. Why this rabbi, what is he getting from this thug, Granick?
Oh yeah, I was gonna make another point, but I think yeah, I think he got sort of like an enjoyment of life that he the rabbi felt was missing, I guess, in just sort of like sort of purely maybe Talmud study, or maybe purely a life of, I don't know, I guess sort of the holy activities, I guess.
Okay, absolutely, right? The whole rabbi spirituality didn't bring him joy the same way that this thug had joy. And so the rabbi is sensing like, wait, what's missing here? In a way, this gangster had more faith. That's the lesson, had more faith than the rabbi, because the gangster had more joy than the rabbi. This is the idea, right? Joy is a sign, external manifestation of faith or trust. If you have no joy, it means you're lacking deeply on the spiritual level, right? In that sense. That is, I think, one of the lessons of Ecclesiastes, right? This ability to trust life or God, right? Is what really is the root of our joy. Without this deep underlying trust, there is no joy to be had, right? Okay, now let me get a few of your questions. Stage, Norena, and Granick. Go ahead.
Actually, the point I was going to make has been long gone, but now I got another question. What do you mean by trust?
So we'll talk about this as we get into chapter 3. So what does exactly, right? What does it mean to trust? And we don't have really the word trust in the text. We have the word fear, right? And we'll come to that. And when we do chapter 7, we'll go deeper into this. So we have to wait a little bit, right?
Okay.
Yeah, because that is the main term that is used in the text, the fear of God. What does it mean? We're coming to that. So we'll get to that. Today
So I have to, so I can't talk about that now.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Nice, Taish. Well done. Let's see. Norena, were you the next one?
Oh, just want to go back about the thing that you say about the rabbi. I think that everything is like a contrast. It's like to say when the, 1 second, please. It's like to say the yin and yang, that you say the opposites attract each other, the opposites need each other. That's how I perceive the rabbi, in the way that he's a holy person, but the same way he needs just like somebody to make a contrast about what is good and bad.
I like that. I like that. That's another meaning, I think, of the story. Well done, Norena. It's the story that the human has to be connected to the holy for there to be completion, right? That's what you're saying, which is, by the way, a beautiful quote from Abraham Heschel, right? 20th century rabbi from New York, right? The key, he says, is to be both human and holy, right? And this is what you're saying, Norena, right? The rabbi sensed he was too holy. He needed a little humanity. And the thug was sensing he was too human, needed a little holiness. The two have to be together. And we are called as human beings not to be just holy, but also human, right? Not to be just human, but also holy, right? It's this delicate balance. Well done, Norina. I very much like your interpretation. I think it's closer to the original meaning of the text than the one I came up with. Let's see. Okay, let me go on, guys. I need to go on a little bit, and then I'll get some more questions. Otherwise, we'll never do chapter 3. Okay, so let's go into this chapter. We won't go into the details of, what does it mean and so forth, but let's go from the beginning, look a little bit at the Hebrew. Right, and you have here in the translation, if mine is an okay translation, it says a season for everything, a time for every experience, right? So, and then you have this list: born, die, plant, uproot, slay, heal. And they seem to be opposites, right? One seems to be good and one seems to be bad. Are you following, right? Being born is good, dying is bad. Planting is good, uprooting is bad. Healing is good, slaying is bad. Building is good. But we have a kind of like dualistic view of life. This is good, this is bad. This is good, this is bad, right? Which comes from the fact that we ate from that tree. Ever since we ate from that damn tree, here we are looking at everything. This is good, this is bad. This is good, this is bad. What is Ecclesiastes telling us here? especially when he concludes, right? Verse 11, a bad translation on my part. Let me give you the actual translation about all of these different times, right? God, okay, hold on, let me get it right here in the, yes. Everything has been, every time, okay, the New International Version has a better rendition of this. God has made everything beautiful in its time, right? This is the best translation of verse 11, right? Everything beautiful, he uses the word actually beautiful in its time, right? So what is the Ecclesiastes telling us about this good and this bad and this good and this bad when he concludes? God has made everything, kol, remember the word from the creation story, all, kol, beautiful in its time, right? Okay, so let me hear some of you on this, right? I'm assuming if you raise your hand, you're going to answer my question. Okay, Ahmad.
I think Solomon is trying to break through the duality and show the complexity of everything and how you can't just break it down into good and bad.
Yes, 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 excellent. Solomon is trying to go before the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? This is a way to break out of this spell that we're under ever since we ate that fruit, right? We're in this spell that this is good, this is bad, and we are judging constantly, this is good, this is bad, pushing this away, taking this, pushing this. And what Solomon is saying here, Ecclesiastes, is saying everything is for your good. He's trying to break out of the duality. This is so Eastern. Oh my God, right? This is so Eastern. When you read Hindu texts, when you read Chinese texts, this is what they're doing all day long, trying to break out of the duality. Plato, I think, created the duality. No, Ahmad? I don't see Plato breaking out of it. I'm seeing Plato maintaining it very strongly. But the Eastern thought from India, from China, right? This idea that we have to break out of the duality to really embrace all of life in its complexity, in all of its dark and luminous beauty, right? I think this is what Solomon is saying here. And by the way, I inquired about the connections between Ecclesiastes and Eastern thought. And actually, there's evidence, right, that there was, at least from Egypt, connections with India, trade routes, and that Solomon himself had connections with India, right? So we do have now some historical backdrop for this text sounding so Eastern, right? So make sure you write this down, right? What we're learning here is that is what Solomon is trying to teach us is embrace all of life, even the things that appear good or the things that appear bad, all of them have their own specific beauty, right? You're going through a good time, this is beautiful. You're going through a bad time, a dark time, this is also beautiful, right? All of the things we go through, they have their specific beauty, right? Just like every season has its beauty, even winter has its specific beauty. Here too, we're invited, right, to embrace all of our experiences as beautiful, yes, Delmas, including cancer, right? Everything, in a way, there is a treasure hidden within it. We learned this with Rumi, I think. Delmas, were you in that class? I don't remember, but I think the poet Rumi talks about suffering, right, as a gift from God, right? Because this is what opens our eyes, right? Suffering is what opens our eyes to the metaphysical dimension, right? We start to see much deeper into life when we're going through dark times, actually. Much more deeply we see than when we're going through good times. So I think this is one of the lessons here that Ecclesiastes is trying to teach us. Let me get a few questions related to this.
Professor.
Uh-huh.
Like you were saying, I think that's why certain people go through certain things in life because God, I guess, picks those types of people because He knows that they're strong enough to go through that. And not everyone can have a life full of flowers, and open paths. There's some people who have to suffer before they can go through these beautiful times, and there's other people who have to go through beautiful times and then they suffer after. I remember when I was a kid, my parents used to tell me, because I didn't like to study, right? I hated studying. I didn't like going to school, especially when I was in between like the high school times. And I remember I was told this one thing I never forgot. It's almost like cry now, laugh later, laugh not, cry later. Like if you enjoy right now, you're going to suffer later. But if you suffer right now and do what you have to do, you're going to enjoy later.
Yeah, absolutely, right? The suffering and the enjoyment are both beautiful experiences in their own right. That's the idea, right? And this is hard for us to grasp, right? We want to say, I just want to have enjoyment. Someone is inviting us to really live through all of our experiences and really honor all of our experiences. Very similar to Nietzsche, right? If you're familiar with Nietzsche, he said exactly the same thing actually in his book, what? Science. Um, Happy gay here, right? Not so they still haven't figured out a way to rewrite this title in the way that connects to the German. So he says this, right? Nietzsche says this when he says, there's a difference between being happy and comfortable. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I guess it's a good time to mention it again, right? Comfortable means you have an easy life, but you never really taste the heights and the depths, right? Happiness is the ability to really penetrate life and really taste both the heights, the bliss, and the lows and the abysses, right, of life. And I think this is what Ecclesiastes is also teaching, right? I think Pierre-Antoine had her hand up for a while. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wanting to say, like, I think it's kind of like still tying into the cyclical nature of life. Like, if you think about like quote unquote like Genesis 3:15, where God's talking about like you bite the heel of a person and like the sun will strike your head or like whatever, you think about how there's a time for everything, like, you know, the opposites and like this balance between the two. And even if you think about the Lion King, I know it's like weird, but like when Mufasa's like the circle of life, like all these things are going to happen. It's just like you have to embrace life itself and just be okay with like the thought of everything not going your way.
Right,
So that's what I think.
exactly, right? Even when things don't go our way, sometimes they are meant to be experienced by us nevertheless, right? When we come out of them, we realize, oh, I needed to go through this, right? Absolutely. Let me get a couple more. Kestenbaum, and then Norena, and then Stage.
Yeah, I'm just going back to what we were saying earlier. I don't understand, why would someone even think initially that Solomon is portraying anything as bad or as anything that is negative. I didn't really view, when he was talking about the seasons, right? Let's say winter and spring. I don't view those as one is good, one is not good. I just viewed them as what we were saying earlier, the yin and yang. So like, where would someone get this idea that somehow he was criticizing or critiquing any of those elements? Like, where would they get that idea from?
Being born and dying is a tough one.
But I don't think that's necessarily, he's portraying that in a negative sense. He's simply just stating circumstances of life, and death is part of that. I don't think he's really taking a particular approach or a particular viewpoint on any one of those things. I think it's a very dry observation.
Right, Granick is protesting. Weeping versus laughing. Granick still prefers to laugh, I'm assuming, correct, Granick?
Yeah, definitely.
Why? We'll talk about this weeping when we go to chapter 7, right? Why? How would you respond, Kestenbaum, to Granick, who's really struggling with these dualities?
I mean, I'm not sure how I would I'll put it like this. Everyone, I think, obviously has a preference, right? When we see weeping versus laughing, we have a natural tendency to want to laugh more than wanting to weep. However, that doesn't negate the fact that it's also very important to weep. If you were laughing at a funeral, you're probably doing the wrong thing. So I think he's really just saying what you were saying earlier, that each element has beauty within it, and is important, but in its specific time and place. And weeping is important in its time and place. So again, I don't think he's really saying one is more preferred over the other. He's saying use all of the experiences within life in order to enhance your experiences.
Right. This is the idea of really that weeping is also part of life, and there's also a beauty in being able to mourn, right? There's also beauty in going through hard times, right? I think this is the idea here, which when we are young, we don't want to hear about this, right? We want to escape suffering as much as possible. We're planning everything so that we don't have to suffer. But when you've suffered like Solomon, right? When you've been through it, you realize, okay, this was in a way beautiful. I'm glad I went through this, right? So it takes a certain age, I think, to really appreciate, right, the fact that both the highs and the lows have their specific beauty, right? And that there is an art to both, right? An art to enjoyment and an art to suffering, right? Both in a way can become beautiful, meaningful experiences, right? In that sense. Let's see. Alim, sorry, there was a line. So let me go to the line first. So Norena, Stage, and then Alim and Sosa.
Um, okay, what I think about this, I think that everything in life is moderation. We need everything, no matter that is like sadness or be happy. God has already a plan for us. It doesn't mean when He removes something or somebody from our lives, and sometimes we try just like to be against to that. There is a purpose of that, and we need the best thing that we can do is acceptance, because sometimes we used to be rebellious towards something, but everything happened for a reason.
Right, so what you're noting very nicely, Norena, today you're very inspired, Norena. What you're revealing, I think, which I think is very important, is this attitude of surrender, right? Solomon surrenders to joy, but he also surrenders to pain, right? This is, I think, one of the main threads of this book is controlling versus surrender. Ecclesiastes is moving away from the stance of controlling and mastering your life towards surrendering and receiving whatever comes, right? And as such, right, when you're surrendering and receiving everything as a gift, right, this is trust, right? This might be one of the definitions. We haven't yet gone into the fear of God, right, which we'll come to later, but already we can see what he means by trusting, right? The ability to receive both good and bad from life equally and receive them as gifts. This could be the definition of trust. Once you see everything as a gift, right? There's no fear anymore, right? Everything you know has its specific beauty and will come at the appointed time. And in that sense, you don't need to be afraid or resist or escape or avoid, right? You are able to stand and receive because you have surrendered, right? Is this making sense? Are you seeing more and more the mindset here? Put your hand in the screen if you're following, right? It's hard for us Westerners we are the civilization of technology. Technology, what is that? Control, right? So it's very hard for us to just, right, relax, surrender, receive, and be more passive, right, in a way, than active. Be more yin than yang, right? This is a yin text, right? This is a wisdom of the East that we are not used to. If you're from the East, this is natural. Everything he's saying makes sense, right? Okay, let's see. There was, oh my God, you guys are like, I feel bombarded by questions. But let's continue. I think Stage, you were next.
Yeah, you're saying that everything is beautiful right here. It says time for birth and time to die. You mentioned that. However, there's one thing, and I think you mentioned that as well, but how do you explain this? If it's so beautiful, then why? Oh, come on. I just lost it. One second. If everything's so beautiful, why does it say he has even put eternity in their heart?
Let's go there now. Let's go there. I think we're ripe. I think also in response to Delmas, right? Delmas is in the chat is mentioning, okay, yeah, suffering can be a factor of growth, but how can we say, right, that diseases or sickness, right,
Right.
is beautiful, right?
Yeah, because after if you're dying, you cannot live forever.
Right,
It's
exactly.
just completely contradictory in every way.
Okay, so we need to push further to understand this, right? So let's go to that.
How? Let me just bring one more thing, and it goes on to say, yet mankind will never find out the work that true God has made from start to finish. So in order to find out, you will never find it out, but you need to live forever in order to attempt at least. So why would you die if why would you die if you need to live forever so you can attempt at least what
Very good. Yes, you're right where we're about to go. So let's take a step further so we can understand a little more deeply what he means here. And for this, we need to understand what is this word in Hebrew translated as eternity. So the wrong translation, right? So I'm here on verse 11 still, right? He has just said he has made everything beautiful in his time, and then he adds, right? Solomon adds, he has put eternity in their mind. I don't have mind. What other translations do I have? Let me check here. Verse 11. So I'm on verse 11. Everybody at least turn there.
I have in their heart.
Yeah, in the heart. In the heart. Yeah. Okay, good. He has put eternity, or he has given actually the actual. So he has given is the actual text, and then we have this word for eternity, which is in Hebrew olam, in their heart. Okay, this is so we need to see, okay, what is happening here. So first of all, the word olam actually on the literal level means world. Okay, so that doesn't help us, right? Doesn't mean eternity. Olam means universe, cosmos, right? Now we have to go further. Olam comes from the verb ne'elam, which means to disappear or to hide. So in other words, we can translate now. This is why olam means universe, because the universe is so vast that we cannot see all of it. That's the idea here behind the word olam, right? Olam, we've translated eternity because simply means the vastness of the cosmos, right? That we cannot perceive. Or you can talk in existential terms, the mystery of being. Now I'm using terms from Marcel or Heidegger, right? The existentialists have talked about this at length, right? This deep mystery, this enormous mystery that surrounds us, right? So here he's really talking about the mystery of life, the grandeur of life, the fact that life itself transcends our understanding, right? Olam is that which transcends our understanding. Let me retranslate. That which transcends our understanding, or mystery, right? Or infinite, but not in the sense of an afterlife, right? This is here and now. Basically, what Ecclesiastes is saying is that in our hearts we have a sense of the mystery that surrounds us. We have a sense, or like Descartes later said, right? We have the idea of the infinite. Same thing here, right? We have within us, we are able to sense the greatness of the universe in a way that the animal is not. The animal just sees its immediate surroundings. We sense that there is more. There's always more, right? So we have a sense, we have a sixth sense, right? Us and the animals, we see, we feel, we taste, and us, we also sense the infinite or the mystery that surrounds us. This is our sixth sense, right? And this is why, this is how I think we can navigate certain experiences like death or sickness, right? Because we are sensing that there is more to life than what meets the eye. This is what is going on here, right? We are sensing that there is more to life than what meets the eye. We are sensing that there is more going on than just the immediate suffering. That is how you can navigate suffering, by the way, right? If you don't have this, you will drown in your suffering, right? But if you have a sense that there is a deeper logic or a deeper order, or that there is something going on a higher level, right? You can navigate peacefully the suffering right? Let me translate it like this. There's a physical world, right? And the metaphysical world. Often, and these are inversely proportional. Let me explain. When things are going good in the physical realm, in the metaphysical realm, spiritual realm, not so great. You're not growing, you're not maturing, you're staying the same jerk you've always been, right? Now, when things are going bad in the physical realm, in the metaphysical realm, a lot of good is going on. You're growing, you're maturing, you're becoming more compassionate, and so forth, right? So this is an awareness, right? That there is a deeper meaning. There is a deeper way to see things than just what we see immediately. So to respond to Delmas and I forgot who it was, Granick, no, sorry, Stage, right? Yes, there is the suffering, but we have a sense of the olam, of that there is more going on behind the scenes. There is a mystery happening that we are a part of that we cannot completely grasp, and it is this intuition that helps us go through with suffering and go through with death. So does this help a little bit? Let's see, Delmas, does this answer your question or your concern a little bit? Delmas, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Talk to us.
Well, I wouldn't say entirely, but I think this is the sort of view that many either religious or people who profess to be religious hold, that because they have an anchor, because they have something, they know there's more to life, right? And that's how they're able to have hope and continue and persist and go through their suffering, whatever that they're going through. So I understand the argument, but then it still doesn't disprove the fact that like the things that still occur in our day-to-day life, which are objectively bad, like with the sickness, they still cause suffering, right?
So, Delmas, I think Solomon would invite you to stop seeing things in terms of good and bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is decay or illness or even death necessarily bad? We don't know what's happening, right? Who has gone through death and come back and said, I was tortured over there, it was horrible, there were flames. Nobody knows, right? It might be amazing, right? In fact, nature, if we follow, like Pierre-Antoine was saying, that everything is cyclic, death might be the prelude to rebirth, right? And if we were to follow the rhythms of nature in that sense. So we don't know whether death is good or bad. It's a mystery, right? We don't know whether decay is good or bad, right? It's a mystery also. So in that sense, right, what Solomon is inviting us to do is to stop seeing things in terms of good and bad, but on the contrary, as everything having its particular beauty, including death, including decay, including pain. We don't know. This is the olam. We don't know, right? He makes it very clear in the verse afterwards, right? Without man ever guessing all the things that God brings to pass. We don't know. The truth is, we don't know whether this is good or bad, right? And we are invited, however, to experience these things, and the ability to receive these things shows the deep inherent trust we have in the universe or in the Creator or in God. Does that help a little bit, Delmas?
Yeah, it helps a little bit. Thank you.
Great. All right, let's see who hasn't spoken yet. Ram.
So I just wanted to add that when I like, because I grew up in church, I always looked at this particular chapter as an inspiration for like exactly what you're saying. Like when it's a good time, you just look at it and you reflect on the good things, but sometimes you read a chapter and you just understand better what life is all about, because you know there's a time and place for everything. But it's a very inspirational chapter to look at. And Delmas, you should really look at it in a positive attitude, not just what's going on in the world, because there's a lot of positives out there.
Right, even what I would go further around, even the things we perceive as negative are still beautiful. This is so
Correct.
hard for us to get out of the mindset,
Yes,
right?
it is.
There is
Yes.
no, with Solomon, there is no good or bad anymore. Everything has its own beauty. This is hard for us to swallow, because religion has, even not just the Western mindset, the dualistic mindset, which is coming from the Greeks, but our religions, which were, in my view, inspired or influenced by the Greeks, have this view: good, bad, good, bad, good. And Solomon is saying, let's stop being like this. We're not embracing life. We're not receiving, right? And so everything that comes, because we do not know. See, this idea that we do not know is in direct contrast with Genesis 3, where Eve is trying to know, right? Solomon is unraveling that. He's unraveling the scene at the tree where Eve wants to know. He's saying, we don't know. And when we don't know is when we really live. That's the idea. Let me write this down, right? First of all, we don't know. And when we accept that we don't know, meaning what is good or bad, right? That's when we truly begin to live, right? And to really penetrate life, enter life, receive all of it without constantly pushing back, right? We embrace the enjoyment, and we embrace the suffering. That is the way to live, according to Solomon, right? Am I making sense? Put your hands. I need your faces. Kastenbaum, Pierre-Antoine, Williams, Safine. Who is this Safine? This must be the next class. Okay. All right. Let's see. A couple more questions. Aline, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to I guess connect it more back to Genesis. So when we were studying Genesis, I mean, at least I saw eating the fruit from the tree of good and evil, and finally seeing the a world in this type of binary as a type of maturation for humanity, right? It's a type of I guess puberty, and I was trying to grapple that with this text. And the way I kind of saw it is that you kind of need to see the world first in a binary of good and evil, and then just going with this theme of King Solomon being older here, he's reflecting on his life after he's seen the world in this binary, and he's kind of reverting back to what happened before the tree and good and evil. So I guess this is just part of this process, seeing the world in binary and then going back to this everything is good type of mindset. So.
I love it. Absolutely, right? You have to first learn to see things in a binary way to reach the deepest wisdom, which is what you, right? In a way, Solomon is going back to the wisdom of the child, right? But of course, much more mature, right? So he goes through the binaries and gets to the higher point of wisdom, which is to transcend the binaries. But you can't transcend the binaries if you haven't first gone through them. And that's what you're saying, Alim. So yes, I like that very much. Nicely put. That's a good way to reconcile the two. Let's see, Norena.
Yes, Professor. I didn't raise my hand, but what is the question? Sorry.
Oh, you had your hand up, that's all.
I'm sorry.
So nothing, right?
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay, Stage, you conclude us. Go ahead.
Yeah, so pretty much Solomon, you're saying that Solomon is saying that Eve should not have done what she did.
Yeah, you could say that. In a way, Solomon is going back to before Eve. He's saying
Solomon is saying that literally this should not have been done. You should not have done what you did because we should be living, we should not know what is good and bad, because now that we know, we're not happy.
Yeah, I think, or he would say Eve needed, like Alim is saying, right? We needed to take that step to be able to transcend it. So you can go either way. Yeah.
So how do you go back?
You go forward.
You cannot, once you see something, you cannot unsee it. Once you hear the truth, you cannot unhear it anymore.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to transcend the dualism. It's true.
I don't know if, like I said, this is a philosophy So I very much doubt that this is what Solomon is saying, but I'm like,
Yeah. So the best way to understand it is to see that Solomon is speaking like an Eastern philosopher, right? He's saying we have entered the word of duality, and now, right, the discipline we have to adopt is to transcend this, right? And this is a discipline that we have to begin, right? And this is the whole book is about that.
was it worth it though?
Well, we're still there. We're not done trying to transcend it.
Okay.
My computer is acting weird, and I'm really hoping it's not going to lose what we're doing here. So I'm going to dismiss you all. Take care of this problem, and I'll see you in a couple days.
Okay,
Thank you,
bye.
Professor. Have a